Hey guys, welcome back. This is the episode where I talk about my birth story. For those of you who are pregnant or hoping to become pregnant with lupus, there are so many different birth stories out there. I encourage you to look at all you can. I encourage you to go on Facebook or Reddit and talk to people who have gone through this because they're not all like this. I don't want it to scare you. So my goal going into this whole pregnancy was to have a live baby at the end and a live mama. And I got both of those things. 6 a.m., March 14th, 2018, we headed to the hospital to meet my little boy. When I got there, they checked my cervix. They saw that I was 4 centimeters dilated, 50% effaced, and the baby was at -2 station. So if you don't know anything about stations, like I didn't, I actually had to re-look it up because I knew what it was at one point, but I didn't know. Basically, it is where the baby's head is in your pelvis. So I was at -2 station. 0 is when it's touching the cervix. At 11 a.m., they started giving me Pitocin. The contractions were pretty intense but manageable. They were a little bit more intense than the Braxton Hicks contractions I had, but they were manageable. They weren't that bad. I got a birthing ball to start bouncing on, and Ryan took a nap, or he went to get some food. We were just kind of doing our own thing in the labor and delivery room. I went on like that for 4 hours. I watched Seinfeld. I watched a couple of movies that I had on my laptop. I was so bored. I was tired and I wanted my kid to come out, and I hadn't eaten anything since 6 a.m. that morning. At 5 p.m., they had upped my Pitocin to 12 milliunits. That was just over time throughout the day. They kept being like, well, you're progressing, the baby looks okay, let's keep putting it up. So I was at 12 at 5 p.m. At 6 p.m., they checked me again. I was at 5 centimeters dilated at this point, 75% effaced, and the baby was at 0 station. Shortly after that, the nurse came in and she said the baby had fallen off the monitor and she was just gonna adjust it on my belly. This happened all the time because I didn't have any fat on me, so it was like putting a monitor on a basketball. The nurse was trying to locate it, and instead of the heartbeat coming on the monitor like it usually did, she started messing around with her phone. And I was like, is everything okay? And she didn't look at me, she didn't say anything, she was just like, just hang on. Just very, very calmly, very casually, but I have been calm and casual in my life, and I knew exactly what that meant. The room started flooding with nurses. A couple doctors came in. They put me on oxygen. They started testing a bunch of stuff. It was in a hurry. They weren't ignoring me, but they were definitely talking amongst themselves very intensely. Finally, they pulled me down on the bed, and they were doing something with my belly and everything, and I had a doctor telling me the risks of a C-section and asking me for consent. I consented to everything. They went ahead and broke my water. They stuck a monitor in the baby's head. It's just like a little pin sticker that they stick in his head to monitor it directly. So after the doctor had explained to me the risks of a C-section and I had consented to it, I grabbed her hand really hard because, labor. I said, tell me my baby's gonna be okay. And she said, you have everybody in here working towards that goal. And I said, tell me my baby's gonna be okay. She said, I can't do that, but I can tell you that every single person in here will try to make your baby okay. That was good enough for me. I let go of her hand. They stopped the Pitocin completely, and my baby's heart rate started to climb a little bit. They gave me about a half an hour break with no Pitocin, and just to let the labor start doing its thing after my water had broken and everything. At 9:30, they started me on 2 milliliters of Pitocin again. Not milliliters, milliunits. The contractions were so intense. I have not felt anything like that. All you moms that went through labor naturally, I commend you. No thanks. I was groaning like a cow. It was very intense. It was like my entire body was just like coming out my throat. It was like my entire body was being squeezed. Just everything was just so painful. At midnight, I was still going through all of this. I hadn't had anything to eat or drink in 18 hours. I had been up since 6 a.m. I'm in an active lupus flare when this is going on, and so basically what I would do is every 2 minutes when the contraction would start, after it was done, I would collapse and fall asleep. and then the next contraction would wake me up again. The nurses came in after that, and they saw what was happening, where I would like go through the contraction and then just like fall asleep. And they were like, okay, you need an epidural. Like you really need an epidural right now. Please consent to it. And I was like, well, check my cervix. If I'm 8 or more, I'm just going to go ahead and go through it. I was 7. So I was like, give me an epidural, please do. So they gave me an epidural. It was really hard for me to hold still, but the magic happened and the epidural went in, and a couple minutes later, I remember being so pissed because the epidural wasn't immediate. It would take like 2 contractions for me to actually start feeling it. And those 2 contractions, I was downright resentful. I was like, this is not cool. I don't want to feel this anymore. After I got the epidural, I was able to sleep really hard for an hour. I woke up to an oxygen mask being put on me, and the room flooded with the same doctors and nurses. They told me it was time to start pushing. I was on my side at the time, and so they flipped me over onto my back. When they flipped me over, my pelvis wasn't square with the bed, and so I remember trying to tell Ryan like how to maneuver my legs so that I was square, but it didn't work, and we gave up. So it was time for me to start pushing. And I was pushing on an angle, and that actually messed up my pelvis so much that it wasn't quite right until I started physical therapy when my baby was 8 months old. So that just like pushing on an angle in labor like really messed up my pelvis. It was touch and go. There were a few times where I was pushing and Leo's heart rate would plummet, and they would be like, okay, it's time to go for a C-section. And then it would climb back up right when we were getting ready to go. And so we kept going with it. We were playing it by ear, but they had my consent to do a C-section, and they were ready to do that. My baby was born at 5:36 a.m., March 15th, 2018. He screamed when he first came out. He was not happy. It wasn't like a cry. It was just like what is this? And then as soon as they put him on my chest, he just sank into me, and he just had his eyes open, just looking around. It was so sweet. In that moment, it was like everything I had been fighting for, everything I had been holding on to for the last 9 months just released. It was like he was here, and I was so happy. But it was like I could stop fighting now. I could actually give him to somebody who could take care of him better than I could. He stayed on my chest for a little bit. When I was pushing him out, I had a 4th degree tear, which is where it goes all the way down to your butthole. So that was painful. I don't recommend it. So they were stitching me up for a while, and after they put me on him on my chest, they said, okay, now it's time to start breastfeeding. And I said something casual like, I think it's time for him to meet his pa. And so I handed him over to Ryan, but the only thing that was going on in my head was, I'm done now. I can give up. So I handed him over to Ryan, and I let go. Just completely let go. I went into an unresponsive state. My blood pressure bottomed out. They couldn't get a read on it. My heart rate got really, really low. All the nurses stopped what they were doing and tried to revive me. They gave me all these fluids wide open. I had not had anything to eat or drink since almost 24 hours before, and in an active flare, I had nothing left. I was already really skinny to begin with, and I had lost a lot of blood during labor. So it took them about 10 to 15 minutes to get me back. When they did, I just kept passing out. I was not in a place where I had any motivation to be awake at all, and so I just kept slipping back out into unconsciousness. So they ordered me food really fast. I got those liquids and sugars into me from the fluids, and it took me about 4 hours to not feel like I was going into the light again. But then we were able to move into the recovery suite, and my little baby, it was just so exciting to hold him and get to know him and see his little face. They did give him an EKG that came back abnormal, but then they gave him another one the following day, and that one was normal. And then we tested it a week later in the doctor's office, and that one was normal as well. No sign of heart block. He was perfectly healthy. He was amazing. He was born 6 pounds, 11 ounces, and we were just so happy to see our little boy. There's the entire labor and delivery story. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. I highly recommend listening to other people with lupus's labor and delivery story because not all of them are going to be as scary as mine. Keep looking around and keep the faith that yours is going to be totally fine. Yeah, I hope you guys are good. Let me know how you're doing. Please like and subscribe and comment if you would, and I will talk to you later.